Hey guys, Hussainy here. I'm a Mercury Pro and I also host the television show Local Knowledge. I live here in Southern California and this is Tuna Town, USA. In the early stages of the season, June, July, and even August, those tuna have just moved into our local waters and they can be very, very finicky. And when I say finicky, I mean like won't look at a bait. They'll have millions of tuna around the boat and you can't possibly buy a bite. So I want to give you some tips today that'll help you target those finicky tuna. A lot of times when the fish first come into our waters, they're feeding on anchovy or saury. Anchovy and saury are both very small baits that are very, very thin profile. They're not a fat, thick bait like a mackerel. They're long and skinny. And when they get on these baits, they will just key in and they'll be super locked on them. And I'm talking about tuna from 15 pounds to even 300 pounds. It gives them what they need and they don't really have to look at anything else. There's a mountain of meat downswell between us and that boat. We'll get these areas that are football fields on football fields of what we call foamers. And what foamers are is a big school of fish that has pushed the bait to the surface. And now the bait cannot flee. And they'll usually do this on a slack tide, so there's no current helping the bait get away. So when they're foaming, what we try to do is we try to figure out which direction that foamer's headed. If you lay back without getting too excited in your boat, you can see the foamers walking one direction or the other. The next thing I want to do is I want to position my boat upwind from that foamer and the direction it's headed to get into those fish. We want to keep the boat as far away from the fish as we possibly can so we don't spook them, but then allow your anglers to make a cast. Now you're going to ask your anglers to cast a very small lure that will match the hatch of what they're actually eating a long distance, and that can be tricky. Small lures are generally light. They get blown around in the wind. They don't cast so well. By positioning the boat upwind, I'm going to give my anglers an extra 5 to 10 yards of just casting distance in normal conditions. Now, as far as the lures go, in order to incite a bite in these foamers, we like to use small little metal jigs. Just make sure your rigging is up to the task because most of these fish are going to be your 20 to 80 pound fish, but it's not unusual to hook a 100 pounder and you want to make sure your gear is up to the job. Another lure along the same vein is these buffalo lures. And if you do the same thing, you're going to basically put this on, let your angler cast it into the fray and try to get a bite by either quickly jerking it through there, wind, jerk, or I'll even throw it in sometimes. I'll jerk it a couple times and I'll just let it flutter down. And a lot of times I'll get bit on the sink because it looks just like an anchovy that got smashed and is just falling out of the school. Somebody's gonna come by and look for an easy meal. The third lure that we've had great success with, and this lure, I wanted the smallest possible stick bait we could get, but we could still cast. And what this is a Riptide 105 and it's an extra heavy model. So it very much matches the profile of a bait fish. It's actually quite a bit bigger than what they're eating, but close enough to fool them. And you can actually work this lure across the surface with some action. These three will account for most of our early season bites on our smaller medium fish. Again, using the technique of sleeking up to them with the boat. Now, as the summer goes on a little bit, these fish settle in, they get comfortable, the bait is still around, they're not gonna foam quite as much, and now we're gonna switch our presentation to bait. Whether we see them up on the surface and we can throw some chum at them because we have a great live bait fishery here in Southern California, we'll try to chum them to get them just excited, get them whipped up, get them around the boat. Sometimes we'll see them visually and then chum them up, or we'll get them on our electronics and we'll chum them up. Now, again, they're gonna be very, very finicky because there's so much bait in our water. That's what's bringing them here, that's what's holding them here. You really have to convince them to switch over to a larger bait like a sardine. And in order to do that, we do what we call finesse fishing. These two are my go-to all summer long, can't get enough of them, burn through them. This is a Mustad 2.0 Demon Perfect Circle, but it's in the 1X strong. If you look close, you can see it's got a very, very light wire. And what that light wire does is it allows the bait to swim more free. In my opinion, the bait, when things get picky, it needs to swim naturally. The other thing that helps me get a bite when things are really tricky is fluorocarbon and a very small section of it. A 3 to 4, 5 foot shot of 25 pounds tied to braid. Now the reason we want that short top shot is fluoro has a bigger diameter than braid. Thus, it's heavier for the bait to pull around and it looks less natural. By having less of the thick line in the water and dragging around more of that ultra thin braid, the bait presents more naturally, it swims more naturally, and most importantly, it can swim away from the boat really, really fast. You can almost predict when you're gonna get a bite when the fish are around. If you pin a bait on with this, you flip him off the side of the boat, he squirts away like a rocket, that's gonna drive those fish nuts and it's gonna get you a bite. So these are our go-tos for bait fishing. These are our go-tos for lure fishing. We're typically fishing these lures on a spinning setup, like a Penn Slammer 3 5500 with a 7/6 casting rod, 50-pound braid with a short top shot of 60 on the lures. And then over here, we're gonna be using like a Penn 25 narrow reel on your favorite bait stick, or even sometimes we go down to our Penn 15s and 12s to really give that bait that natural presentation. These will convince those finicky fish to give you a bite when you need it most.